In this video, I will teach you something most students don't know, and I hope you will learn something, like and subscribe and share. So let's get right into it. So the parent functions we are very familiar with are x squared, I skipped one, x to the 1 power, x cubed, x to the 4th, and x to the 5, and so on and so forth. And so now x to the 1st power is a linear function, x to the squared is parabolic, x to the 3rd is cubic, x to the 4th is quartic, and x to the 5 is quintic. And so now these are polynomials of various degrees, of n degree. Okay, so you can have a polynomial of nth degree. And so now the interesting thing about these parent functions is that they all behave kind of similar, kind of different. And so from grade school, we know that 1, 3, 5 are odd numbers. And numbers like 2, 4 are even numbers. Okay, so we take that same idea and we bring it to the polynomial realm. And so now some of these functions are odd polynomial functions, and even polynomial functions. And so now each type of a polynomial, whether it's odd or even, they behave slightly differently. Okay, so for example, let's say the function x to the 1st power, it behaves something like this, right through the coordinates. Let's say this is y and this is x. Okay, and now the function equals x squared, which is a parabola, behaves like this. And now another example, fx to the cube, which is another odd function, and it behaves something like this. Okay, so if you notice here, the odd functions, their endpoints point in opposite directions. So you see this linear function, you have an arrow pointing this way, an arrow pointing that way, the opposite way. The cubic function, it goes up, and then the other side comes down. However, with the even functions, the x squared, both ends of the function point in the same direction. So that's pretty interesting, right? And so now if we take fx, and let's say to the 4th power, it's essentially the same parabola, maybe slightly narrow, but again, it's in the endpoints are in the same direction. And in the x to the 5th power, it'll look something very similar to this cubic function. Now, what if there's negative? What if each function is multiplied with a negative function or multiplier? So let's say now the f of x, the linear function is actually negative x to the 1st power. And so what this negative does is that it flips it about the y-axis. So for this case, it'll point like this. So it'll flip it about the y-axis. So it's like goes from like this and flips like this. Now how does our even function behave when it gets multiplied by a negative multiplier? So now negative x squared, it'll look exactly the same. However, it'll be flipped about the x-axis. So it'll look something like this. The endpoints point in the same direction. However, it is mirrored about the x-axis. Okay, I hope you learned something new. Please like, subscribe, and share.